Hello, bears. My name is Roz. Oh, we know who you are, said the sister bear. Her voice dripped with sarcasm. We're very happy to see you again. Yeah, we're very happy to see you again, echoed the brother bear. Why do you always repeat what I say? Said the sister bear to her brother. It's so annoying. I was just backing you up. Let me do the talking. Fine. You don't have to be so mean about it. The bickering bears were interrupted by the robot's friendliest voice. With whom do I have the pleasure of speaking? How rude of us, said the sister bear. My name is Nettle, and this is my little brother, Thorn. I'm not little, snapped Thorn under his breath. It is lovely to meet you both, said Roz, but I am afraid I really must be going. And I'm afraid we can't let you do that. Nettle stepped into Roz's path. My brother and I, we don't like monsters. I'm not a monster. I'm a robot. Whatever you are, we don't like you, said Thorn. We hear you've become very comfortable on our island, said Nettle. Now we're going to make you very uncomfortable. Yeah, we're going to make you very uncomfortable. Stop repeating me, Thorn. Poor Roz was in serious trouble. The bears were closing in on her, but she couldn't run, she couldn't hide, and she couldn't fight. The robot didn't know what to do, but before she could do anything, there was a loud squawk and a streak of feathers. Stay away from my mama! Brightbill swooped down and skidded to a stop between the robot and the bears. So, the rumors are true, Nettle laughed. There really is a runty gosling who thinks the robot is his mother. How could anyone be so stupid? Do yourself a favor, Gosling, and fly away before you get hurt. She is right, Brightbill, said Roz. Please let me handle this. But the gosling stood his ground. He spread his wings and hopped around, ready to defend his mother. The bears roared with laughter. Then, with a flick of her paw, Nettle sent Brightbill tumbling over the ground, over and over until he flopped onto his back and stared up at the sky, stunned. This is our island, snarled Nettle. And it's time for you to go, growled Thorn. Roz made herself as big as possible. She banged her chest and roared wild, angry sounds. But the bears were not intimidated. They roared right back. And then they attacked. Nettle pulled Roz into a fierce bear hug while Thorn clawed at her legs. The robot tried to shake free, but the bear would not let go of their prey, not this time. A cloud of dust bloomed around the trio as they thrashed closer and closer to the edge of the cliff. All of a sudden, something burst out of the trees and into the open. Mother Bear. She was gigantic, like a mountain of golden fur, and she was furious. It seemed like this would be the end of our robot, but Mother Bear wasn't there to join the fight. She was there to break it up. Nettle, Thorn, get over here this instant. The young bears should have listened to her mother. Instead, they pretended to not hear her. Nettle slashed at Roz's body, and Thorn began wrestling with her foot. She grabbed the foot with both paws and forced it up from the ground. Then, with every ounce of his strength, he twisted the foot around. Reader, the following events happened very quickly. First, there was a strange little thwip sound as the robot's right foot popped off her leg and sailed through the air. Then, everyone toppled over. Nettle and Roz fell sideways over the cliff, but Thorn fell backwards and tumbled right off the cliff. Do you know what the most terrible sound in the world is? It's the howl of a mother bear as she watches her cub tumble off the cliff. Mother Bear's howl was so startling that it snapped Brightbill right out of his stupor. Her howl was so powerful it shook Roz's entire body. Her howl was so loud that animals heard it clear across the island, but there was no reply from Thorn. Mother Bear's howl only faded. She wilted to the ground. Roz watched as her detached foot sailed over the edge and plummeted down to the shore below. It fell past circling seagulls, smashed off a rock, and disappeared into the wave. And that's when the robot noticed something furry dangling from the cliffside. Thorn. His full weight hung from a tree that was rooted to the rock wall. He gripped the tree tightly with his jaws and looked up at Roz with wide, frightened eyes. "I see Thorn," shouted Roz. "Grab my legs, quickly." Mother Bear and Nettle scrambled to their feet. Each bear took a leg in their mouth, and slowly, very slowly, together they lowered Roz headfirst down the cliff. Thorn whimpered through clenched teeth as he watched the robot approach. Then he felt her strong arms wrap around him and heard her booming voice holler, "Pull us up." Thorn let go of the branch and cried, "Please don't drop me, Roz. I don't want to die." "Don't worry," said the robot. "I will not drop you." The next few moments seemed to drag on and on and on. Mother Bear and Nettle kept pulling on Roz's legs, and more of the robot slowly came into view until a furry golden head finally appeared, and Thorn leaped into the embrace of his family. "Does it hurt?" Bright Bill touched the smooth surface where his mother's foot used to be. "No, it doesn't hurt, but it will be difficult for me to walk." The bears huddled around the gosling and stared at the robot's stump of a leg. Nobody understood how a foot could pop off like that, or how Roz could remain calm. "Roz, I'm sorry my cubs attacked you," said Mother Bear. "Sometimes they are completely out of control." "It's okay. You know how they are at this age." "I can't thank you enough for saving Thorn. I promise my cubs will never bother you again. Isn't that right?" "Yes, Mother," said Nettle and Thorn together. The robot tried to walk. She bobbed up and down on her uneven leg, which worked well enough on flat surface on the cliff top, but once she entered the forest, her problem became clear. The smooth stump had no grip, and it slipped around on the forest floor. So Roz tried hopping on her one good foot. She took a few crunching hops and then clanged into a tree trunk. A few more hops and she crashed into the undergrowth. Thorn said, "I'm really sorry I broke off your foot," as he helped the robot up from the weeds. "I forgive you," said Roz. Whether she was capable of true forgiveness is anyone's guess, but they were very nice words, and Thorn felt better when he heard them. "It looks like I'll have to crawl home," said Roz. "Nonsense," said Mother Bear. "I have a better idea." Mother Bear lay on the ground while her cubs boosted Roz onto her back. Then Bright Bill fluttered onto the bear's broad shoulders. And when they were safely on board, the group set off through the forest. The robot was heavy, but she was no trouble for the giant animal. Mother Bear strolled along as if it were perfectly normal for a robot to be riding on her back. They made quite a grand procession, all walking together. Everyone wanted to see the mother robot riding the bear. The group worked its way past ancient trees and over rolling meadows and through bubbling streams, collecting more and more curious animals as they went. But the parade couldn't last forever. As the sun went down, the other animals began drifting away one by one, and when the parade finally arrived at the nest, only the original members remained. "Here we are," said Mother Bear, helping Roz down. "Now, wasn't that better than crawling all the way home?" "Oh, yes, it was wonderful," said the robot. "Thank you very much." "It was amazing," squeaked the gosling. "My friends won't believe me when I told them I rode across the island on the back of a bear." It was late, and it had been a long, difficult day for everyone, and so the bears said goodbye and headed back to their cave. Bright Bill and Roz stood in the garden and watched their new friends lumber away, and then the gosling said, "Mama, do you think you'll ever walk again?" "I'm not sure," said the robot, "but I know who to ask for help. Now, go get ready for bed." Mr. Beaver squinted at Roz's stump. I've never built a foot before." He stroked his whiskers and muttered to himself, "There are really 3 problems to solve. The foot needs to grip the ground, it needs to be durable, and there's the issue of fixing it to the leg. I might have to consult a few friends." "Will she ever walk again?" said Bright Bill. "What's that?" Mr. Beaver was lost in thought. "Oh, not to worry. You just sit back and leave everything to me. I love a challenge." Mr. Beaver plunked into the pond and returned a while later, rolling a large section of tree trunk. "Say hello to your new foot," he said, slapping the wood with his tail. The robot said, "Hello, new foot. That's the spirit. This beauty's from one of the hardest trees I ever chewed. I just need to make a few modifications." Mr. Beaver placed the piece of wood next to Roz. He squinted, repositioned the piece, and squinted some more. The beaver chewed and gnawed and carved up that piece of wood, turning it over and over in his paws. Chit-Chat looked down from a branch and chattered through the quiet moments. "This reminds me of how I once saw a fox kill a lizard. Blah, 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 blah." He kept chattering. His name is Chit-Chat, after all. The wooden foot took shape, and before long, Mr. Beaver was standing beside a beautiful carving that resembled a foot. He tried to slide it over Roz's stump, but the opening was too small, so he scraped out more until it was a perfect fit. "Very good," he said, spitting out a wood chip. "My friends should be arriving any minute with the next few things we'll need. And there they are now. I'd like you to all meet Bumpkin, Lumpkin, and Rumpkin, but I call them the Fuzzy Bandits." The 3 fat raccoons shuffled into the garden, dragging a tangle of vines. "Good day," said Bumpkin. "Good day," said Lumpkin. "Good day," said Rumpkin. You might already know this, reader, but raccoons have very nimble hands, and the Fuzzy Bandit used their skillfully hands to tie those vines around the robot's leg around her new foot. The vines caught nicely on all the dings and dents and scrapes. Once they were tied, good and tight, Mr. Beaver threw back his head and hollered, "Trunk Tap, we could use your assistance." There was silence. Then the 3 quick taps echoed through the forest canopy. "Ah, that'll be him." A very handsome woodpecker swooped into the garden. "You called?" came the woodpecker's musical voice. "Indeed I did. Everyone, this is my woodpecking pal, Trunk Tap. Now, Trunky, we need some tree resin, some really sticky stuff. Can you help us out?" "Of course I can," said the woodpecker. "You've got a perfect pine right here." Trunk Tap hopped over the crusty old pine tree and pecked a few deep holes in the bark. Thick, syrupy resin began oozing down the trunk. Mr. Beaver scooped up handfuls of the resin and smeared it all over the wooden foot and the vines until everything was glistening with slickness and glistening with stickiness. And when the resin dried a short time later, Roz's foot was finished. "This is wonderful," said the robot as she strolled around the garden. "I'm as good as new." Mr. Beaver and Trunk Tap and Fuzzy Bandits went away feeling happy about themselves. They had done a very nice thing. But it was the first wooden foot any of them had ever made, and within weeks the vines were coming undone and the foot was sliding loose, so they returned, determined to get it right. They found even harder wood and even tougher vines. They experimented with resin, heating it by the fire, letting it boil and thicken until it became an indestructible glue. They kept tinkering with the design until finally Roz had herself a wooden foot she could rely on. Huzzah! Mr. Beaver rapped his knuckles on the new and improved creation. I knew he'd get it right. Roz moved slower than before, and she had a slight limp, but she was back to her old self again, and that was a relief to everyone, especially Brightbill. With coaching from his mother, Brightbill was becoming a truly exceptional flyer. He wasn't the brightest or the strongest. He wasn't the biggest or the strongest, but he was the smartest. You see, he and his mother had studied the flying techniques of other birds. They would sit for hours and watch how hawks and owls and sparrows and vultures moved through the air. Then he'd go up to the grassy ridge and Brightbill would practice what he'd learned. Soon he was diving and swooping and darting and soaring across the island. Adult geese frowned at his flying techniques, but the goslings thought he was amazing. Each morning a gaggle of them would wait on the water for Brightbill to lead them in the sky, and then a few hours later he'd return home with Roz, shaking his tail feathers and honking at his latest airborne adventures. Brightbill was thinking about the small button on the back of his mother's head. His mother was thinking about it, too. They couldn't stop wondering about what would happen if the button were pressed, and one day they decided it was time to find out. Roz sat on the floor next to the nest. Her son nervously stood on a stone behind her. "I'm ready when you are," said the robot. "Okay, here we go." Brightbill took a deep breath. Click. Roz's body relaxed. Her quiet whirring slowly stopped, and her eyes faded to black. "Mama, can you hear me?" There was no answer. Brightbill waddled around and looked at his mother's face. Her strange spark of life had gone out. The gosling had never felt more alone. He was ready to switch her back on. But what if she wouldn't wake up? What if she woke up different? The gosling was afraid to press the button, and he was afraid to not press the button. Brightbill took a deep breath. Click. Roz's body tensed. Her quiet whirring slowly started. Her eyes began to glow. Mama, can you hear me? Hello, I am Rosm Unit 7134, but you may call me Roz. The robot spoke those words automatically in a language that Brightbill didn't understand. His little heart raced as his worst fears seemed to be coming true. But a moment later, her familiar voice returned, and the robot said in the language of the animals, Hello, son. How long was I out? It seemed like only an instant for me. You were out for a few minutes, but it seemed like forever to me. The days were growing shorter, the air was getting crisper, and one morning Roz walked out to find a layer of frost in the garden. Autumn had come to the island. The tree leaves, which seemed green for the robot's entire life, turned yellow and orange and red. The smell of the flowers faded as the blossoms withered. All the rich scents and colors of the island were draining away. The animals were also changing. Furry animals were growing more fur, feathery animals were growing more feather, scaly animals were starting to look for new homes. Yeah, it's cooling off, croaked one frog to another. Before long, it'll be time for sleeping. Yeah, you better start looking for a good hole, croaked the second frog. Have you found one yet? Nah, croaked the first frog. I'll look in the hole next week. For now, we're going to enjoy the warm sunshine while it lasts. Yeah. Many of the island animals were already thinking about their winter hibernation. Frogs, bees, snakes, and even bears would soon disappear and spend the next few months resting out of sight. And then there were the birds. Some birds, like owls and woodpeckers, would spend the winter nesting and eating the island's few edibles. But the migratory birds were preparing for a long journey south, and among those birds destined to leave were the geese.